All right, so let's begin. So let's look at methodology. In fact, Rex had already provided a good overview of methodology and methods used in a qualitative study. This is a diagram explaining briefly what a qualitative design is. So we begin with philosophical assumptions, and from there we decide which research method, which inquiry would be most appropriate for us to address our research problem, to answer our research questions, to answer our research objectives. Then there are several data collection techniques. We can use one of them. We can use 2 or 3 of them. It all depends on which techniques are more appropriate to gather information, to collect data which are valid, which are accurate, which are useful, meaningful to your study. So you can use interview. Even for interview, there are different types of interview. Focus group discussion, observation, document review, so on and so forth. Then we need to do coding. And there are also many ways to do coding. There is a book by Johnny Saldana, Professor Johnny Saldana. There are a lot of ways to do coding, structural coding, pattern coding, so on and so forth. How should I put it? These coding techniques may be different. Essentially, the purpose is the same. And the purpose is how you manage your data, how you reduce your data so that you can make meaningful discussions and you can draw implications from your findings. So there are different types of data analysis, content analysis, thematic analysis, and Agung mentioned about discourse analysis briefly this morning. So there are different ways of data coding and data analysis. Essentially, the purpose is the same. And that is, as I mentioned earlier, how you manage data, how you reduce data from your interview scripts, from pictures, from audio, from video, into something that you can draw conclusions from. Okay, from there, you can write your report, okay, your discussions, your implications, and your conclusions. So I hope this diagram gives you an overview, a bird's eye view of the process, what qualitative design, research design entails. I make sure in your report, especially in your methodology, it could be chapter 3 or chapter 4, or in your paper. Obviously, you cannot write too much on a paper, a manuscript for publication, but you have to tell enough. You have to make sure it is clear, because as I mentioned earlier this morning, there is no statistical means to support, how should I put it, to generate your findings, to support your findings, and therefore your explanation, your reasoning, your clarity, your justification, all these are important to convince the examiners, the reviewers. This research is rigorously done, and the discussions, the implications are valid and meaningful. Okay, so I will go through this quickly. As I said, we don't really have time to go into all the details There are many books, many articles out there. If you do a simple Google search, Google Scholar search, you will find hundreds and thousands of articles. What we try to do is we provide all this information so that you can see things, how should I put it? You have a bigger picture and you know what you should consider during the process. Whether it is the most appropriate decision, we definitely cannot tell you. It depends on your study. But at least you are given the right resources. You know what you need to do in order to arrive at the most appropriate decision for your own research. So in terms of research methods, qualitative inquiries, there are quite a number of them. Rex has talked about phenomenology. Basically, it is about human experience. You also have ethnography. This is where you have to immerse yourself in the context of your study in order to draw data, understand the meaning of the data from your observation, from your investigation. Oops, sorry. Now, as I mentioned earlier, when you use ethnography, it is very, very important that you immerse yourself within the context of the study. It could be related to the culture or values and lifestyle. I remember a friend of mine told me he wanted to do a study about the lifestyle of the natives. And these people that live in the remote area, they live in the outskirts, in villages. The researcher could interview them. So interview is just a data collection technique. Now, if you interview them, for half an hour, for 1 hour, no doubt you can get some data from them. Of course, the amount of data, the quality of data also depends on how skillful you are as an interviewer. But remember, if the study is about understanding their values, their cultures, do you think that you can understand them using that half an hour, 1 hour interview? Even if that interview is perfectly done for an hour, you bring back the data. Do you think these data are enough to tell you about their values and their lifestyles? I won't say there isn't any. If you do a good interview, definitely you will get something, and from there you can draw your conclusion. However, if you want to immerse in their culture, you want to understand why they do certain things, and there could be some sensitive issues. There could be some issues which are important to a certain ethnic group. So back to the example I just mentioned. When that researcher did an interview, a preliminary interview, it just so happened that a hornbill was cited. Now, for those who are not familiar with where I am, Sarawak, hornbill is the protected bird species in Sarawak. So the researcher asked the native person, do you know what this is? What hornbill is that? So that person, the respondent, told him, this is a hornbill and this is a protected animal in Sarawak. After the interview, that was only a preliminary interview. This researcher actually stayed with them. I can't remember, it could be 3 weeks or 1 month, okay? Because he decided from the beginning he would use ethnography to conduct his research. He needed to immerse himself into their culture in order to understand their values and their lifestyles. Even though the researcher knew about them through reading, through conversation, but it is not until he stayed with them could he understand better how their values, how their lifestyles were. So he stayed with them. There was no formal arrangement of interview or focus group. Basically, he became part of the community. He became part of them. He lived their lives. He did what they did. In the morning, when the community came together to have conversation, he joined. He did not disrupt them by telling them, please stop, let me prepare my recorder, now you can start, click. No. Okay, so you have to have everything ready. You don't want to disrupt because it's important that you are in a natural setting and let things be the way it is they are. So after spending 1 or 2 weeks with them, he knew the committee people better, and the natives also knew him better. So they began, they became more hospitable. And one day, they served this researcher a meal. Okay, and obviously it is a bird. Okay, and he asked, "What is this?" So they told him, "This is a hornbill." Now, a few weeks ago, you told me this is a protected animal. Now you serve me with hornbill. Okay, the reason is because now we trust you, and as a good friend, we serve you with this food. Okay, please do not generalize the story that I just told you. This just happened at one instance. So for the natives, for these people, some of them may not know about protected animals. Some of them they actually know, but for their survival, why should I bother? Okay, we may think that they are being irresponsible. Well, we do the same thing in principle. We know what is wrong, but we still do it. This is why during COVID-19, we still have people not abiding SOPs. They are not stupid. They are not illiterate. They just don't want because they have their own personal agenda. They have their own personal activities. So likewise, this is the similar situation. I hope you can see from this example that on one hand, interview is only a data collection technique. It is not yet an inquiry. An inquiry is where you decide which approach that you will adopt in order to make sure the design of your research would draw valid data and meaningful information from your respondents. That design would affect the outcome of your study. So designing is very, very important. Before you begin your research journey, you have to think through. If you cannot think through because you have no experience, you have to talk to your supervisor. You have to talk to other researchers, your seniors. You don't wait until it happens. It will be too late. Well, I wouldn't say it will be too late. Maybe you can still fix things. But at the beginning, think through what you would do. If you don't know what to think, as I mentioned earlier, because you are inexperienced, talk to your supervisor, talk to your seniors, talk to other researchers, or read articles so that you are aware. So in this situation, you have to employ ethnography, or else there's simply no way for you to know their actual values and lifestyles. Whether the researcher reports the findings, I don't know, because I only know the story until that part. Whether he reported, what he saw, I'm not sure. But I think this example, this story should make sense to you because, as I mentioned earlier, it happens every day. It happens every day. You can easily write your conclusion based on literature. You can easily write your conclusion based on interview. Why? Because after you decide what you want to do, before proper planning, before adequate design, you go straight to data collection. So this is the problem. For masters and PhD students out there, be careful. Spend enough time to design. Think about it yourself. Talk to your supervisors. Talk to your friends. And when you read articles, not only you read the articles to support what you want to do, you read the articles to study how their studies were done in the past. That will bring a lot of insights, intelligence to you in your study, in your research design. Okay, so I just use this ethnography as an example why qualitative inquiry is important. Data collection, interview, focus group, observation, all these will come later and they will fall into the right place. And whatever you do, they are all for the same. They are all useful for you to address your research questions. Okay, Agung in the morning presented about ethnography. That is interesting because apparently it seems to contradict what ethnography is about, but in principle, it is the same. The advancement of technology, so much data online, secondary data, not only in the printed form, in documents, but there are so many activities, communication, interaction online. So how can you immerse yourself into the data through the lens of ethnography? So that would be ethnography, so that you can also draw data, draw meaning from your observation. If you go into depth, then you need a lot of rich data. If you go for breadth, like what Agung mentioned in the morning, you can go for data mining, big data, and because of that, tools, applications will be useful because our memory can only do so much. But if you handle 10, 20, 30 interview scripts, pictures, you can do it manually. You can also do it with software. But if you do something more than that, perhaps you should consider software to assist you. Okay. We will talk about it briefly again later. Case studies, as I mentioned earlier. So this is another useful method for you to explore things, to compare and contrast because of different contexts, different situations. Okay, and Rex also provided guidelines for sample size, and he repeatedly said, and I wish to repeat again, these guidelines are useful as a start. How many you should collect, it all depends on the richness of your data. So at least in your writing, you have two justification. You can support your sample size using past studies, and then you can support your sample size through data saturation. So that would be the safer thing to do. Grounded theory approach. So this is an approach for you to develop theory, or before theory, you want to develop a framework of relationship in order to understand the interlinks, interplays between different factors, different variables. Okay. Participant observation, either you participate or you don't participate. So again, it depends on the study. I was invited to conduct the study before. Well, I was more like an advisor. I did not do the study directly, but I was invited to assist them. It is a study about childcare. And there is a curriculum called free time. Naturally, we interpret free time as time when you are free. You can do anything that you like. But in childcare, according to them, you see, I learn from them, free time doesn't mean the kids are allowed to do anything they want. The caretakers are allowed to do anything they want. No, they must still be taken care of to do other activities. They are not in the class. They are not doing something, formal like students. They are free, but they need to be supervised. They need to be taken care of. So what happens is they want to investigate what the caretakers are doing during free time, because the management suspected that during free time, the caretakers left the children do whatever they wanted, and the caretakers were busy doing their own things. Example, they play their handphone. So what can you do? What can you do in this situation? Okay, I told them what they can do. I don't know what they did afterwards. I told them if they observe and they participate, the caretakers would behave differently. Okay, during free time, since you are there, they will behave differently. They will, sit beside the children. How's your parents? How's the food? Nothing wrong with that. And I believe some caretakers are doing that. But those who won't do, they would behave differently because of your observation and participation. Okay. Now, what else can you do? So if you want to observe, you don't want to participate, then maybe you can install CCTV. Okay. If you install CCTV, is it feasible? Because it will cost you. This is why, like I said earlier, research design, you need to think through. If you install CCTV, yes, you can observe, you don't participate, but it will cost you. Where does the money come from? This is issue number one. Issue number two, when CCTV is installed, when the caretakers are actually there, so they actually see someone installing CCTV. So out of their curiosity, they will ask. Or being a negative person, they will think that this CCTV must be for us, So they become not happy and they behave differently again. So what is left? What is left for you to observe? So there are many ways. The problem we have, maybe problem is a bit too harsh. One weakness is that we read things selectively, and we have already decided what we want to do, and we did not really think through. We thought that this is the only way, and therefore we only read selectively in order to justify what we want to do. Little have we considered that it may not be the most appropriate arrangement. So I told them another way to do it is, this sounds a little cynical, but I just told them, just get some students. Of course, they need to be trained. So they would just walk around, do some gardening, collecting rubbish during free time. So at the same time, these enumerators can collect data from the observation. So there is another possibility. Okay. Of course, you can also do interview. You can also do focus group. And if you do focus group, instead of asking him or her, do you take care of children during free time? Well, this is something personal. He or she may not want to tell you. We talked about shadowed data this morning. You can make it broader, make it less personal. So you can ask him or her, what do you think about free time? Do you think in general the caretakers would do their own things during free time? So you ask something general. It's like you're asking him or her about someone else. In many situations, this could be useful. Of course, there are criticisms that this is not useful, but there are situations it is useful because you are not interrogating one person. You are not going to punish one person. You just want to know from each individual what the situation is, how the situation is. So in that case, it may be appropriate to use FDG, and in your questions, don't ask personal questions. Ask something they are comfortable to tell you. Also, before that, it is important to establish rapport with them. Again, it shows the flexibility of qualitative design. When you establish rapport with them and you are an outsider, a researcher invited to do research, instead of having the principal, the headmaster as the researcher himself or herself, the respondents may begin to feel comfortable. Okay, of course, they will not be comfortable right at the beginning. So it all depends on how you establish. I have another example. I was invited to do a research on the second worst performing school in Kuching. The principal and the teacher in charge invited me to do this. Why students perform poorly, and they wanted me to do some investigations. So it is a qualitative exercise. To cut the story short, I spent some time knowing the teachers first. So I attended their teachers gathering. I gave each of them a paper to tell me what they think the problems are. Very general. So I went through all the answers when they submitted. I went to schools again so that they not only they knew, they began to accept that I was a researcher. But at the same time, when I talked to them, I told them I'm here to help, because whatever you tell me, it is not for personal interrogation. It is for me to compile all this information together to come up with something meaningful to help the school, and it could directly, indirectly help you as well. So it took some time for me to do all this. Then only I began with focus group discussion, and each group 5 to 10. So I needed to carry out a number of focus groups in order to interview, talk to every teacher. So in the first focus group, they told me things about the problems. Many of these things were already in the written script. Earlier they submitted the form to me. I went to the second focus group. I can't remember. It could be the next day, not on the same day. Again, they told me problems. Schools, too close to the roadside, noisy, timetabling problem, clash of subjects, not enough teachers, students using different languages, but teachers can only speak one language, so on and so forth. All right, all the issues, all the problems. It was not until the third focus group, after some time again, when the teachers knew me better, I knew them better. During the focus group, I saw two teachers making eye contact. And that eye contact suggested that they were struggling whether they should tell me something. Okay, that's why you have to be alert as the moderator. Of course, I won't say, I see your eyes, you must have something, so tell me. You cannot do that. So you just have to be natural, but at the same time, you try to facilitate specific topics because you know something is going on. Something might be hidden behind those words. After I don't know how long, then one of them said, I think we better tell you. Okay, now only after two focus groups, during the third focus group, they decided to tell me. And she told me, actually, in their school, the principal was about to retire. Because he was about to retire, he did not want to get himself involved in too many administrative things. He did not want to make major decisions. He left all this to two teachers in charge. Okay, two teachers, the two leading teachers. And these two teachers were not in good terms. As a result, there are two camps. Some support her, some support her. Whatever she did, she would arrange things to make the other side difficult. Whatever she was entrusted to do, she would make sure things will not be as easy for them, the other teachers in another group. So during this time, I realized this is beyond my research scope. You could say the problems are with the two teachers. You could also say the problem is actually the person who invited me to do this research, the principal himself. Okay, so I completed the focus group discussion. I provided some recommendations, nothing to do with the two camps because it is something sensitive. I told the principal, I met the principal, I asked, when are you going to retire? Then he told me in the next 3 months. So I told him, happy retirement. Okay, bless you, happy retirement. That's it. You don't have to tell him, everything because just let him go in peace. And before I left, I told these two teachers separately. This is actually not my job, but because, as I said earlier, value is important to me. So I decided to do something not as a researcher, and that is I approached these teachers separately. I told them, because they know what is actually happening, all right? They know what is actually happening. So I told them that, for the sake of the school, put yourselves in her shoes. Because whatever you are doing, the intention is good. It is for the school. But the way you do things, you don't have to make the other person difficult. So why not talk to her? Perhaps both of you can become best friends forever. So that was my last message before I left the school. I, closed the case. Anyway, This is just another example. I don't know whether you find it helpful. Participation, observation, and again, why see the unseen, know the unknown, and do the undone. If you think this is challenging, again, maybe qualitative research is not for you. But if you still want to do it, you have to realize that your findings, your discussions may not tell everything. If they tell enough, it's okay. If your research is something simple, okay, example, it is a qualitative research, you just want to know who are the most popular heroes in Southeast Asia. Well, that is very straightforward. Okay, you don't even need to know why. You just need to do, a quick study to generate frequency and percentage in Southeast Asia. I don't know who in Southeast Asia. Okay, let's say in Malaysia, let's say Datuk Lee Chong Wei. Okay, our badminton hero. He received 5,000 votes, which is equivalent to 15%. So he is number one. So if you do a qualitative like this, by all means, go ahead, because the nature of your research problem is quite simple. When I say simple, it doesn't mean it is useless. It all depends on what research you want to do. So if this is all you need to do, go ahead. It could be interesting. It could be interesting. What is it? Social influencers in social media. So we just go to social media and then we do some review, and then from there we get our answers. So it is something very straightforward. In that case, things are more structured. And if you do any interview, the interview will also be a structured interview. Basically, good morning, Rex. Could you tell me who is your hero, the most popular people that you know in the Philippines, in Southeast Asia? Okay, tell me 3 names. I don't need to know why, or I may ask why, but basically 2 questions: who are they and why? Structured interview. Okay. However, if you wish to go deeper to know why, as I mentioned earlier, you want to know their values, their lifestyles, then you need to embrace uncertainty. You need to embrace emerging data. You need to use your skills with good preparation to facilitate the process in order to get as much data as possible from your respondents without torturing them, without exhausting them. Okay, so I hope I've said enough. Whichever method you decide, but it has to be right for your data coding analysis later. Okay, Rex has done a very good job. So for qualitative study, we have to resort to non-probability sampling. Okay, and they are convenience, purposive, quota, snowball sampling techniques. In fact, in Rex presentation, there are a few more. Again, you have to decide. Okay, don't decide based on which one is superior to another. There is none. It all depends on which one is more appropriate in your situation to get most data from your respondents. Okay, so you can go through this. I do not wish to repeat what has been said in the morning. Data collection, your sample size, the importance of data saturation, how much data, okay, guidelines. This is just another reference from another book. Again, don't follow this as a Bible. It depends on the context of your study. All right. It also depends on the complexity, the nature of your research problem. In certain situations, 5 interviews will be enough for you to reach data saturation point. For some situations, you may need 20 or 30. Okay. Now, I would say this reluctantly. I would say this in a very reluctant manner. And that is, for those who do masters, for those who do PhD, a safe sample size would be between 30 to 50. 30 to 50. Again, I said this in a very reluctant way. They are actually past studies. One of them is by Professor Chet Perry. If I remember, I will include this article in the email, because I will also check with Agung and Rex if they wish to pass me any articles before I send all this to you. I met Chet Perry in person in Australia. So in one of, I think, 2 articles, well, there could be more than 2 articles, but I read 2 articles. And when I went to Australia a few years ago, I emailed to him. I wanted to see him. So I met him. So he is the person who, he is one of the many, experts who came up with guidelines for masters and PhD students. Okay, he graduated a lot of managers, directors, practitioners. So he came up with syllabus, guidelines that directors, managers, practitioners can do to complete their PhD. And many people in Australia know him. And they can testify one thing, and that is his students, their thesis, even though they are practitioners, they are as good as PhD graduate by research. Okay, so he passed me some of the materials. I do not know where I placed them, but anyway, this is another story. Okay, Chet Perry, you can look up for him. C-H-A-D, Chet, P-E-R-R-Y, Perry in Australian. Okay, earlier this morning, I also mentioned the importance of preparation, preliminary design, preliminary decision. Remember, the researcher himself, herself is also an instrument. So in quantitative study, when we do pilot tests, when we do pre-test, we are talking about the instrument, the survey, the questionnaire. Now, in qualitative study, yes, you can do the same. You can test the interview questions. You can test the equipment. If any equipment is necessary, example, recorder, video camera, and all that. Most importantly, this pilot study, this pretest, is to actually test you and also your enumerators if you recruit people to collect data for your study. I hope you get the point. Researcher as the instrument in qualitative study is the most important thing. If you get students, enumerators to collect data, you must train them. Okay. A lot of stories, a lot of stories. But if I tell too many stories, I will not be able to finish on time. Anyway, I often do training because I just do not believe people can do good data collection, interview, whatever, without training. If they are experienced, if they have done it before, at least training is still necessary to explain what this research is about, what is required, and there are some instances what they should do, what they should not do, ethical consideration, all this, it requires training, okay? Not if you still want to get your enumerators to collect, by all means, if everything turned out to be fine, good for you. In the report, make sure you don't tell everything, tell half truth. This is just another how should I put it, political way or diplomatic way to not lie. Because as I said, methods, the procedure is very, very important to convince the examiners, the reviewers, whether your research is rigorously conducted. There is one instance. I don't know why I gave in. My friend told me these enumerators, they have done a lot of survey for the government. They are experienced. They know how to collect data. So we can pass to them directly. So what I did is we arranged a very simple training. I should have conducted a full-fledged training, but I conducted a simple training to explain to them where to collect, where to return the questionnaire to me. These are the interview questions. And then once the interview is recorded, please upload. So I only explained to them all the procedural administrative things. I did not do training with them. So guess what? When they return with their data, I went through all the data. It's all done through interview. I spent could be 8,000 Malaysian ringgit on them, thanks to funding. I decided to throw away all their data. Okay, I decided to throw away all their data. I could still use it if I only want to get it done. I want to report to them, everything is rosy, everything is nice. Give me my last payment, bye-bye. How you adopt it, how you make decision, this is not my business. I could have done it, but I just cannot. I just could not. I told my friends, we throw all this away. Now I need to recruit enumerators again. We train them. We collect data again. Okay. So to cut the story short, this is a project from a government agency. We completed. We presented. In our presentation, not only we talk about the good things, we also highlighted the bad things. When you highlighted bad things, it will stimulate, it will stir up response. But the good thing is whatever they ask, we could respond with evidence. So eventually they asked me the one question. Basically, this study is about building something. I don't want to say too much. They asked me, should we build or not? Okay, because they are practitioners. They have budget from the government. As a researcher, I still, do what I typically do. I told them it depends. If you fulfill these 5 recommendations that I mentioned, the good things and the bad things, then I would recommend that you proceed. So the responsibility now, I shift back to them. I already did my job. I cannot tell you yes or no because it depends on these 5 recommendations and whether you execute these things. If you execute these things, we have enough data to tell you that it will succeed. It will succeed. Okay, that's the end of my connection. Well, I shouldn't say connection. That's the end of the presentation. If you ask me now, I don't know what is the situation. But again, this is just another story telling you why pilot study, pre-test, preliminary preparation decisions are super, super important. Don't rush into data collection. You will regret. If you get everything done well and you move to data collection process, of course, this is not a problem. I cannot quantify, how long your preparation is. It depends on your situation. As I discussed with Rex this morning, we are not living in an ideal world where the respondents are there, they are willing to help us, they are so happy that they can participate in a questionnaire. I distribute a lot of questionnaire, but I can tell you that I hate being distributed a questionnaire because That's why I told my students, don't do your project in the last few months, because if you do that, that 1 or 2 months, the same person will receive more than one set of questionnaire. Sir, can you help me? Another power, another power, another power. So I may be able to focus on the first one, second, third, fourth, I lose my concentration. I will still get it done, but I just don't read. I just look at the shape of the word. If you do interview, there are questions which require thinking. There are questions which require some recollection of past events. So if this person is not focused, he may tell you what pops up, but when he gets home, when he's away, it happens to us. After the interview, you go back home, you take a shower, then suddenly, oh yeah, there is another thing I should have told him, but never mind. It is done already. If you also don't care, then it's fine. But what if you care and you miss the opportunity, you miss the chance to elicit that piece of important information from that respondent? Okay, of course, unless you still follow up later. So there are many ways to do things. Flexibility is allowed as long as the process is guided. Now, looking at this slide, people may find your questions difficult, or they may not be motivated to tell you. Okay, so task difficulty will negatively moderate capability and ability. Motivation will positively moderate, ability and willingness to answer accurately, honestly, telling you the truth. Okay, so this is a situation. You may say the best way to motivate them is to give them token of appreciation. Let me tell you, there are also studies showing why it works, why it does not work. Do you have the budget? And does it really work? Okay, I have friends from UCTS, I have friends from UMS. Looking at the names, if we go out to collect data, and the token of appreciation is our university's keychain. What else? Pen. Okay. If this is the token of appreciation you give to me, I will say I don't want it. I will say I don't want it. Nothing wrong with your gesture, but again, I'm quite cynical. You have a lot of stocks, so you don't know where to give away, so you give it to me. No thanks. So you have to think. There are tokens which is not expensive, but it matches different status. It matches the status of a general worker. It also matches the status of a general manager. So you have to think in your context, in your study. There's no size that fits all. It depends. One of my friends, he has the budget. He used 15 ringgit, $15, 15 ringgit. So it is roughly $4 coupon, Starbucks coupon. Okay, as the token. So when he interviewed managers, even though this is just a coupon, Starbucks coupon, it only costs $3, $4, but he appreciates it. Okay, because cheap, but something nice to have, and he can also pass to his daughter, son. So something along that line. It may not cost you much, but it is something that people appreciate. Or you may not even give token at all. Let me give you one example. I need to interview people. I told them where is the best place to interview. He told me, why not at home? So before I went there, I did some homework. Still during that conversation, then I learned that He has family, he has 2 kids. So, and these 2 kids are still young. So what I did is I brought an assistant with me. So at the living room, before we started the interview, we talked to him. We wanted to know, we spent time with his family, with the kids. And the assistant that I brought, I must make sure he or she likes to be with the children. So can you see how things work in this situation? When I started my interview, my assistant spent time with the kids. This is something which the parents appreciate. Okay, no disruption, and we can finish everything on time. We don't want to waste his time. We don't want to waste their time, and we left when the interview was completed, and the children were happy. The assistant was happy. The parents were happy. I'm happy. I was happy because I collected the data I needed. Okay, so that motivated the parents to tell me they could focus, and we could get things done on time. Okay, I know I'm running out of time, so that's my problem now. Okay, I've talked about this self-fulfilling prophecy, so I will just skip this part. Just be careful, because if many times we may ask leading questions, we want the answers so badly from them. Apart from asking them questions, we begin to give them examples. This could be a leading question. Okay, you need to know what are the words that you can use during follow-up when you do probing. Okay, but the moment you give examples, you have to be careful. In general, we will not encourage you to do that, but there could be some exceptions. The point here is, if you ask leading questions, then this is one of the potential biases you will encounter. Okay, you will encounter. Okay, types of interview. I will just go through all this briefly. Rex has said enough. So all these skills are necessary: eliciting skills, listening skills, interview techniques. In my presentation, in general, it is all about dealing with text. That's why I'm glad Rex and Agung are here with me, because in a qualitative research, you could be dealing with audio, pictures, and video, social media data as well. But in general, I would say 80%, 70 to 80% of qualitative research, they are mainly dealing with text. Okay, so I will focus on this. But if you have any questions on, other sources of data, feel free to ask in the chat room. Okay, so these are the interview technique. This is not a rule. Don't treat it as a template. You can use it in exercise. So normally, my enumerators, I will ask them to do 1 round of interview first as a pretest. After they complete the interview, we need to come together and discuss the interview they did in order to learn from that experience. And from there, we improve. And then only we proceed, or we continue, or we start the actual data collection. Okay. My supervisor did the same to me. He told me, did 1 round of interview, transcribed, and bring the audio. So I completed the first interview. I brought the transcription. I brought the audio. Guess what? In his office, he played the audio and listen to the conversation between me and my respondent. It was a very awkward situation, but that's how you learn. After 10 seconds, he stopped. Hiram, could you have done better in this situation? This is how we learn. And then another 15 seconds, another 15 seconds. it was mentally exhausting, awkwardness to the uttermost. But after that 2 hours, you learn something. You really, really learn something. As a researcher myself, as a researcher yourself, you can also learn from yourself, and that's why critical reflection is very important, very, very important. I may be bold in saying all this to you, but I may clink when I watch my own video because I don't know how I perform. So this is the real life situation. It could potentially affect the quality, the richness of the data you collect. Okay, so he even asked me, he stopped somewhere. He asked me, he told me the way the respondent, responded, it seems that he was not comfortable. So he asked me, what was his body language at that time? So I told him I could not remember. I could not remember. If possible, again, if we are living in the ideal world, we want to video cam the whole thing. It may cost us, and also the respondents may not be willing. So that's why there are many situations which are not ideal, but there are ways to remedy. As long as we can justify, we can still proceed, we can still get things done. Okay, how do you probe? How do you be directive in your interview? Okay, example, probing. You can probe by asking who, where, what, how. You can probe by asking him to elaborate. So don't stay silent all the time. Give her some affirmative sound. Example, yeah, correct. If he talks and you are playing your handphone, then gone. Then it is a gone case lah. He or she would not be interested in the interview anymore. Or you can ask him, earlier you mentioned about this. Could you clarify? The best way to ask him to tell you to clarify is to ask him, could you give me an example? Because when he gives you an example, there are a lot of information in examples, and he or she feels comfortable if it is something that he remembers, something he's willing to share. Or instead of asking advantages all the time, you ask the question from another angle in order to somehow help him to switch to another component in his or her brain. Many times when you do that, it triggers another part of his memory, and because of that words, oh yeah, he said, that is another thing. Example, if you ask about all the advantages about travel bubble, he may tell you all the advantages, and then you switch. Is there any disadvantage? He may tell you there is none, but because of this question, he remembers another advantage. Then he will say, oh yeah, there's another advantage, and it is blah, 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 blah. Okay, so this is just an example. Of course, there are many disadvantages for travel bubble at the moment. So contrast props can trigger the person. Otherwise, within that 30 minutes, within that 1 hour, if it is something about value, lifestyle, culture, and you keep on asking why, could you remember, could you share with me your past experience, it could be difficult for him or her to tell you everything, everything important in that short period of time. Okay, so you can go through this. Another example. This is just another example. You can prepare, and also it is good for you to do it together with your enumerators through training, through workshop. Okay, So this is what I did with some years ago. What are the variables? We don't have the details yet. These are the labels. These are not the definite variables yet. These are just the labels, and we want to explore what are the items and what are the main questions and what are the possible probing questions. This is not necessary if you do it yourself. This is useful if you have a few people doing the interview. Why? Because you need to make sure their interview, their props are consistent. Even though they cannot be the same entirely, at least they know what they need to ask, what else they need to ask in order to get the data they need. Okay, different respondents, different ways to respond to questions. When you ask the first question, he may already tell you the answers to the fifth questions. So props are useful for you, to monitor the situation and whether you have collected enough data. It's good to have the recorder. If you write everything down, you may lose focus. Because you lose focus, after his explanation, you know that you want to ask something, but you forget what you want to ask. Okay, so again, whether you should do it individually, you should do it in pair, whether you should write everything down or you just write important notes, especially things that you want to ask. If you record, you can always listen to the recorder later. Okay, so again, I will not go into the detail. In-depth interview, which Rex mentioned this morning, diet charts, because you treat 2% or 3% as one unit. Okay, pair interviews. Okay, focus group discussion, which we have covered this morning. I'm not sure if you are aware, focus group discussion is only one type of group discussion. Okay, you have consensus panel, you have natural group, you have community interview. So it depends on the setting. Which group interview will be more suitable in your study. Enumerators, okay. Should you go for the experienced one or should you go for the raw ones? Both have pros and cons. Okay, both have pros and cons. Again, something that you can read. Rex also covered this in the morning. Make sure the device is good. Okay, backup. You will cry. Okay, after a few hours of interview, and when you are at home, you realize your recorder did not record. Okay, make sure that doesn't happen. Transcription. Okay, you can transcribe everything verbatim, or you can transcribe the important points. Again, it's about justification. You can go through how things can be done. This is just another form I prepared for my enumerators some years ago. At least all the transcriptions collected, they are consistent in terms of format. It's easier for me to compile. It's easier for me to incorporate into NVivo, Atlas T, Quick Course for analysis later. Okay, translation and also bad translation. Okay, now many have been said about this. I will encourage you to check the articles using the links. Many have been said about bad translation, and they always like to talk about Brislin 1970. Bad translation has many drawbacks. And when Brislin wrote the article in 1970, there was a reason why he recommended bad translation. We researchers, typically, we don't read the full article. We cite what other people cited without considering whether our context is similar to the context when bad translation was introduced. Okay, so you have to be careful with that. In many situations, it is very difficult to come up with agreement between the original language and back translated language. Okay, so another way to do it is to do it collaboratively. I don't have time to go into detail, but this is another way to make sure not only words are translated, it also makes sure the meaning behind the words is captured. Okay, especially when you do studies related to culture, value, lifestyle. Okay, if you love Datuk Lee Chong Wei, he is your hero, that could not go wrong, because Lee Chong Wei, that is super obvious, very obvious. Okay, but if someone said in English, in your mother language, I like to do something, I very like to do something, that very could have different implications in different situations. Okay, so again, something for you to consider. Okay, ethical issues, I think I would not want to explain too much. It is a must. It is a must. Something that you have to. Oops, sorry. Oops, sorry. Hold on. Something that you have to do, and something you have to report in your thesis, in your paper. Okay, I will skip this one exercise. Okay, I will finish this in the next, hopefully, 10 minutes. And then I would like to pass the floor to Rex and Agung. And after their presentation, we still have time for Q&A, and I will also do some wrap up. All right. Okay, coding and analysis. As I told you earlier this morning, there are different ways to code. There are different ways to analyze. However, essentially, they are all, the purpose is the same, and that is, it helps you to manage your data, to reduce your data, so that you can draw meaningful conclusions from your studies, from the findings, from the data for your study. Okay, so there are many papers. I'm sure later on we will learn from Rex and Agung as well. You will get all these slides, how you conduct your data coding and also your data analysis. Okay. All right, so these are the points which we have been talking about. As I said this morning, I prefer to have a theory as the basis. So this is what the slide is about. The last two things I would like to highlight again. Okay, number one, pay attention to deviant cases, exceptions. And number two, data analysis may be non-linear. It is an iterative process. So these are the two things I want to highlight from these two slides. Statistical results, statistical analysis, we do not like outliers. For qualitative study, we like outliers. We like outliers. There could be deviant cases. There could be unknown cases. There could be exceptions. Don't throw them away. If you use Atlas T, then just do in vivo coding as it is, or you call it as unknown, because later on you will go back again to look at all the codes and quotes under unknown. Why is this important? Okay, let me give you another simple example. I like to give students essay questions, all essays. So when they return, when I mark their paper, I may start marking as a strict lecturer. I may start marking as a linear lecturer. After marking a few scripts, I begin to understand the way my students answer my questions. And at that point of time, I may reflect, self-reflect. Am I being too strict? Or am I being too lenient? If I give this person, and this is already the 20th script, additional mark here because he actually tried to do something. What about the first 20 copies? Would you go back and do all of them? Some would say yes, some would say no. I rest my case. What I want to say here is it is an iterative process. It is an iterative process. And when you put all the quotes and quotes together under unknown, you don't know where to park. When you go through them, separately, they are alien to you. But when they are together, you may see something. You may see something. So don't throw them away. Okay, delete the item, remove the item. Don't do that. You can code them as unknown or en vivo code. Is it called en vivo? I can't remember. En vivo coding, if I remember correctly. You code as it is. Okay. If you use, I need to learn from Agung as well. I first learned en vivo, and then after some time, I began to use Atlasti. And then after some time, I began to use Cos. I explored Lexim Answer before, but if you now ask me where the buttons are, I cannot remember, but at least the concepts are still there. So anyway, I hope you get the point. Huh? Expect these two things to happen. It actually spice up your research. Okay, I think I've said this enough. Researcher is the instrument, and it is an ongoing process. This is why earlier, as I said, when you do your pre-test, you can already begin to analyze your data. When you collect your data through the first, second, third interview, focus group, or observation, you can actually do coding and analysis throughout the process at the same time. Before you end your data collection, you basically have an idea. Of course, you still want to explore, using various analysis later, but you already have some ideas how your findings would be. Okay, anything that goes wrong, you can remedy, you can change in the process. Okay, again, this is something that you can look at. Never expect an ideal situation. The text will be free-flowing, choppy, everywhere. They say something irrelevant, or they say something else. They may tell you what they think, not what they experienced. Again, it depends on what research you are doing. So the process will require coding before you move into analysis. Okay, so when you have your data, this is why it is important to have coding process before you move into analysis. Even though, as I said earlier, analysis happens all the time, but that coding process is critical. The software can facilitate coding. The software cannot tell you which codes. Even if you use machine learning, okay, algorithm, you still have to interpret it, okay, because it may not be robust enough to explain the meaning behind the words. Okay, so to various degrees, human intervention, subjectivity, interpretation is still very, very necessary. Okay. All right. So this is basically what I said earlier. Data reduction exercise. This is by Miles and Herberman. A very good book. So how you reduce your data, eventually you can draw conclusion from your data. All right. So there are many ways to code. If you find a way to do it that suits you, I would say there is no right or wrong. There is no right or wrong. Unless you use a software, then you have to know how to use it. If you do it yourself, some people, old timer, they still like to print everything out, put all the papers on the floor, so that you can remember the pattern and you can switch things around. Some people like to use sticky notes they put on the wall. or some people like to do the coding directly on the transcript, left side, right side, top, bottom. So this software, example Atlasti, is designed in a way it resembles the way you take notes. You jot down, you highlight, quick course the same, and Vivo the same. Then from there you can code. You can write your memo. Even though memo is not part of your data, they can be used to support your data. Okay, so memoing is another technique during data coding analysis process. Okay, so basically these slides talk about coding, jotting things down, annotation, highlighting, memoing. So these are useful techniques for us to code and analyze our data. Now, at the end of the coding process, of course, analysis is ongoing. The codes that you produce, there are three characteristics. You want these codes to be valid. You want these codes to be mutually exclusive. And you want these codes to be exhaustive. Why? Because these codes are supported by text, quotes, evidence from your qualitative data. Now, for those who are doing quantitative research, the principle is the same. When you have variables, you want these variables to be valid. You want these variables, you don't want these variables to overlap each other too much. Also, you want this variable to have content validity. It actually explains, it actually forms the construct or whatever you want to study. That is quantitative. Now, you imagine the continuum. On the qualitative side, we are actually doing the same. However, we have to explore and elicit data from the field directly. Okay, so if the codes that you produce are overlapping each other, then you may have to consider they may be identical. Can you combine them together? Some people, after doing this, they like to put all the data into SPSS to run factor analysis. They collect, well, before that, they collect data and then they put into SPSS to run factor analysis. The idea is the same, even though they are not exactly the same, because you combine them based on correlation. Okay, so in qualitative study, we also combine these quotes together to form codes, and these codes can then form themes or categories. So again, it depends what you need to do for your study. Okay, this is just to show you different authors, different terminologies, different terms. Essentially, it is all about data management, data reduction, and how you validate your data in the process. Okay, so this is the process, as I mentioned earlier, something that you can refer to. Okay, I will end soon. Still, I need to spend 1.5 hours. So when you have your data, when you do your coding, when you do your analysis, there are three approaches. Of course, this is just one guideline. There could be multiple, there are multiple guidelines, but I find this easy to follow. Number one, read the data literally. Number two, read the data interpretively. And number three, read the data reflexively. So whether you do it manually or you do it with software, these are three skills that you can adopt to read your data in order to do coding and analysis. Okay. Triangulation. I think I will stop at this point because I know Rex and Agung have something similar. So I hope you learned something from this particular discussion. I'm aware there are a few. Are there any questions? Let's see. Yeah. So how to decide sample size for pilot test? Now, for qualitative study, sample size uh, is not really the concern. When you do your pilot test in your qualitative study, it is about making sure your interview protocol, your recorder, your enumerators, and all that. Of course, your interview questions, they are ready before your actual data collection. So you definitely cannot say, I would do 30, 40, 50. You don't have the luxury to do so many. So I assume this question is about qualitative study. If it is, then sample size is not a concern. Report how many people you interview and how you improve your instrument after pilot test, after pre-test was done. Okay. Okay. And then the next question, what is your stand in including quantitative data in qualitative study? Rex, we will discuss about this later. So the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Hiram. Good afternoon. So
Thank
when
you.
I start? Yeah. When can I now start? Okay.
Yes, please.
Yeah, let me now share my screen. Okay. Once again, good afternoon, everybody. And I'm now seeing familiar faces in the Zoom room. Hi, Lani, Sochia. Good afternoon. Okay, so this afternoon, I'll be talking about achieving rigor in qualitative research. So rigor here in qualitative research simply means the thoroughness, okay, or the accuracy of the findings, okay, of qualitative data. So a reliability and validity in qualitative research, is it a fact or a myth? It's actually a question. If a reliability and validity are concepts present in qualitative research, given that these two terms, reliability and validity, are highly positivist in nature, meaning to say they are more inclined to quantitative study. So it says here an argument given by the authors. Qualitative research is frequently criticized for lacking scientific rigor, with poor justification of the methods adopted, lack of transparency in the analytical procedures, and findings being merely a collection of personal opinions subject to researcher bias. That's why if I'm going to recall some previous literature about qualitative research, most of the authors label qualitative research as a soft science because of the lack of rigor, okay, in the conduct in the conduct of the study, in the data collection, especially in the analysis, given the very subjective nature of qualitative research. So it says here that validity, referring to the integrity and application of the methods undertaken and the precision in which the findings accurately reflect the data. So that's the definition of validity, whether the findings are actually reflective of the data. And reliability describes consistency within the employed analytical procedures, or in quantitative research, whether you can generate similar findings if the procedure is implemented repeatedly or a number of times. That's reliability. So they are all, as what I mentioned, very specific for quantitative research, positivist perspective. Hence, according to Sandilowski 1993, qualitative methods are inherently different from quantitative methods in terms of philosophical positions and purpose. Then, alternative frameworks for establishing rigor are appropriate. Hence, the formulation of the following according to Lincoln and Guba, which are complementary to quantitative terms. For example, credibility, which is equivalent to internal validity for quantitative research, transferability, which is equivalent to external validity or generalizability for quantitative research, dependability, which is equivalent to reliability of quantitative research, and confirmability, which is equal to objectivity in quantitative research. According to Shenton, the terms credibility, transferability, dependability, and confirmability are more naturalistic than those internal validity, generalizability, reliability, and objectivity. Hence the terms credibility, transferability, and so on. So now let's take a look at one by one. And the following are simply suggestions from the article of Shenton how to make sure that credibility is achieved in a qualitative paper. Credibility here seeks to ensure that their study measures or tests what is actually intended. So referring to internal validity, it answers the question, how congruent are the findings with reality? Okay, whether the findings are actually representations of data. So here are some measures suggested by this article. Adoption of appropriate, well-recognized research methods. So for example, the well-recognized research methods as suggested by Creswell, for example, phenomenology, is it a case study, is it an ethnography, is it narrative study, is it a discourse analysis? So adoption of an appropriate, well-recognized research methods where the methods are already established. Development of early familiarity with culture of participating organizations, particularly in ethnographic study. So you can go, as what Dr. Hiram said, you can have the first batch of first episode of interviewing, and then you go again there to do in-depth interviewing. So it's good to do that to ensure credibility. Random sampling of individuals serving as informants, although this is highly purposive, but once you're able to determine the population, okay, the population, those who qualify for your study, you can do a simple random sampling. And triangulation via use of different methods, different types of informants, and different sites. So triangulation simply means data confirmation by, for example, on the level of methods, okay, in the level of informants, and also in the level of sites, just to at least lessen the bias of the study and of the findings as well. Now, you have to be able to provide tactics to help ensure honesty in informants. Dr. Hiram highly elaborated this area, tactics to help ensure honesty in informants, also to elicit rich responses coming from the respondents. So I don't like to dwell much on it. Iterative questioning in data collection dialogues, very important to make sure that you can get similar results when you ask, okay, similar questions a number of times. Negative case analysis, again, Dr. Hiram already made mention about it, very important, that would somehow challenge your findings, that will enrich as well the overall package of your qualitative study. Debriefing sessions between researchers and superiors, very important. As a researcher, especially novice researchers, we must have constant dialogues, constant consultation with our superiors. So we know if our activities are correct, so we know if we are on track, okay, if we're on track in our study. Then peer scrutiny of project, very very important, especially when you conduct a study in group. It's good to allow your group mate, for example, to scrutinize the project. All right, and use of reflective commentary, okay. From the word itself, reflective commentary, it's about yourself making reflections. It's like metacognition, thinking about your thinking, thinking about your thought process, whether you're going well, okay, you're doing right, all right. So the monitoring of the researcher's own developing constructions, okay, which the writers consider critical and establishing credibility. Very important to do reflective commentary as to the progress of your study. Same and still under credibility, description of background, qualifications, and experience of the researcher. Again, this is very important that we have to that the one who conducted the research is qualified, has the knowledge as well as the skill. That's why if you do not have those, you have to undergo training, okay, so that you can actualize the process specific to a particular tradition perfectly well. Member checks of data collected and interpretations, theories formed, member checking, okay, of data collected, like after you have collected the data, after you have transcribed, maybe after you have analyzed, you'll bring back this data to your key informants to ascertain whether you have analyzed well or correctly, or you have what you have in your analysis is actually the reality of your participant. Then thick description of phenomenon under scrutiny, very important that you have to really spell out, okay, comprehensively what the phenomenon is all about. Okay, so as a reader, I can understand what is the phenomenon under study. Then examination of previous research to frame findings. As usual, since this is research, this is scientific research, we have to consult previous studies to back up our own findings or to refute our own findings. I mean, yeah, to back up or support, okay, our findings. Very important that we have to consult previous literature. Now let's proceed to transferability, which is equal to external validity, or the most understandable concept, generalizability. Okay, so this is concerned with the extent to which the findings of one study can be applied to another situations, where the finding of one qualitative study can actually be transferred or applied to another context. In positivist work in quantitative area, the concern often lies in demonstrating the results of the work at hand can be applied to a wider population. So in quantitative research, there is a certain level of generalizability. That's why you have to properly compute sample size. Okay. It is the responsibility of the investigator in the context of qualitative study to ensure that sufficient contextual information about the fieldwork site is provided. Again, as a researcher, a qualitative researcher, we have to provide rich information, rich background about the context, okay, about the phenomenon, about the site as well. Even when different investigators offer results that are not entirely consistent with one another, which is expected in qualitative research, since we have different perspectives, okay, different worldviews. This does not necessarily imply that one or more is untrustworthy. So provision of background data to establish context of study and detailed description of phenomenon in question to allow comparisons to be made. So that's very clear. So in order to suffice transferability, we have to provide comprehensive description of context, comprehensive description of the phenomenon. Positivist employs techniques to show that if the work were repeated in the same context, um, we are now in the reliability or dependability. Okay, dependability in qualitative research and reliability in quantitative research. But before that, let me just go back very shortly in transferability. Now, in terms of transferability, it's now the responsibility of the one who reads it to make a conclusion whether this study can actually be transferred to another context, given the descriptions, okay, given the descriptions, given the elaborations, the contextual background provided by the author. So as a reader now, the ones reading your report, your qualitative report, it's your responsibility to make any decision to decide whether this qualitative study can actually be transferred, okay, into another context and actually be carried over to another context. Okay, so let's proceed to dependability in qualitative research. In quantitative, this is equal to reliability. So positivist, referring to quantitative research, employs techniques to show that if the work were repeated in the same context with the same methods and with the same participants, similar results would be obtained. So that's the concept of reliability, that you can get similar results even if when you implement the procedure repeatedly or a number of times, you'll get the same results. So that's the core of reliability. Here in qualitative research, in order to ensure dependability, we have to employ overlapping methods. Overlapping methods here require the use of, for example, you have to use IDI, in-depth interview, you have to use a focus group discussion, and other methods to triangulate the findings, okay? The use of overlapping methods. Then we should be able to provide in-depth methodological description to allow study to be repeated. So this is the concept of replication in quantitative research. So in-depth methodological description. Okay, what's the methods that you use in your study? Phenomenological, for example. So you should be able to spell out there um, in-depth methodological description to allow study to be repeated or to be replicated by some other researchers. We're done with reliability. Let's proceed to objectivity or confirmability in qualitative research. In confirmability, even tests and questionnaires are designed by humans. The intrusion of the researcher's bias is inevitable. Exactly. Even in quantitative research, we have certain level of bias. So this ensure as far as possible that the work's findings are the result of the experiences and the ideas of the informants in the concept of qualitative research, that the results and the findings of our study should come from, okay, the ideas of the informants rather than the characteristics and preferences of the researcher. So that's very clear. So what are we going to do to achieve objectivity, triangulation, to reduce effect of investigators' bias? As what I mentioned, triangulation can be done by method, okay, by the level of in the level of the participants or by participants or in the site in order to confirm findings and to lessen bias. Admission of researchers' beliefs and assumption. As a researcher, we have to be reflexive. We have to disclose our intentions in conducting the study, our own biases as well, your inclination, your orientation, so that as a reader, I know where I can situate my understanding of this particular qualitative findings. Okay. Next, recognition of shortcomings in studies methods and their potential effects. Very important that we have to spell out the limitation of the study that after you have conducted, although we delimit, but sometimes there are things that you have not that you failed to do. So you have to humbly accept and humbly spell out those shortcomings under limitation section in your study. Then we have in-depth methodological description to allow integrity of research results to be scrutinized. Same with what I already mentioned, in-depth methodological description, very important. Okay, so as a reader, I'll be able to trace, okay, how you conducted, how you analyzed your qualitative research. And use of diagrams to demonstrate audit trail. Okay, use of diagrams to demonstrate audit trail. I would just like to give an example of an audit trail. Actually, audit trail allows an observer, for example, as a reader, observer or reader, to trace the course of the research step by step via the decisions made and procedures described. In the context of our study, we just usually this is already a form of an audit trail where we provided, for example, IDICF1. This is the code we've given to a particular respondent. Okay, then we have the document number, okay, page 6 actually. Then we have the line number, meaning the transcript, this particular verbatim transcript where we lifted from, it's on page 6, line number 117 to 124. We usually indicated this one in the paper. So if there are questions relative to the veracity of the information, we can immediately look back to the original source, to the thick transcripts, okay, transcriptions. So that's what we do, and this is what we incorporated in the body of our papers. To us, based in the based in our how we do here, this is our way of providing audit trail. Okay. However, there are some studies in the study, for example, of Cathala and Morley 2018, how to appraise quantitative. This is actually qualitative research. Here we can actually form an audit trail like this, a diagrammatic format, in order for me as a reader, for example, as a reader, to trace how you reach your findings and how your findings are elicited from your data. So interview data transcribed into textual format is the first step, followed by this. Familiarizing self with data involves reading and rereading transcript, then followed by this. Data reduction, simplifying text, selecting extracts, then here, up to here. The development or develop themes into coherent story to illustrate findings anchored in participants' words. So this is also another a very nice display of an audit trail so that you'll be able to present how you extract your theme from your interview transcripts. Now, I'm almost done. I actually have just one slide left. It says here, Sandilowski 1993, research is both a creative and destructive process. And I highly believe in this statement that research is both a creative and destructive process. We make things up and out of our data, but we often inadvertently kill the thing we want to understand in the process. Okay, it's creative and destructive. Okay, it's creative basically because we can possibly contribute to the existing pool of knowledge, and it's also destructive, especially if we make up the data, especially if we make conclusions out from just somewhere. Okay, because we have to, derive our conclusions from the data, and once the methodology is erroneous, we have nothing to talk about. We have nothing to talk about once the methodology is erroneous. That's why I would like to leave you with this final note that without rigor in research, may it be qualitative or quantitative research, research is simply a work of a witchcraft. And I would like to highlight that without rigor, research is simply a work of a witchcraft. Everything is just like magic, and you have nothing to contribute to the existing body of knowledge, or to the pool of knowledge. That would be all, Dr. Hiram, and back to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rex. That is another interesting, insightful presentation. So these are the four things that we need to do, and we need to report to ensure that our data collection, coding analysis process is of vigor. Rex, before we move to Agung, there is a question for you. It is by Sochi. Hello,
Hi.
Rex. How can we as a researcher park our beliefs so that it does not influence our interpretation?
Well, that's a hard question. Yeah. Actually, based on my experience in conducting qualitative research, um, I usually conduct rigorous literature review after data collection and data analysis. So before I'm going to do the analysis, I do not have my prior knowledge, more or less, so that I cannot influence my interpretation later with my own biases, with my previous knowledge. Okay, that's one thing in order to at least limit your own biases, yeah, your own beliefs. Yeah, that's one thing. Number two is by making use of triangulation, that you can
Mm,
triangulate our
yeah.
yeah, you can do FGD, we can do idea and other sources of data to at least lessen the bias. Because according to Heidegger, in interpretive phenomenology, that's why he formulated that interpretive or hermeneutic phenomenology, because it would be impossible that we can completely withhold, okay, that we can completely withhold our own biases in the
Mm.
interpretation of data later. So there are some steps actually, which I
Yeah.
already,
Thank you, Rex. Later on, I will also, actually, it is in line with what Rex mentioned earlier. We will look into triangulation. We can also have multiple coders uh, to cross validate, so that the data analysis, the findings are not based on personal opinion, imagination. Interpretation is still necessary, but we just have to make sure the rigor of research, as Rex presented earlier, is also established. That's wonderful. Keep your questions coming. For Michelle, we will get back to you later. Now, I would like to invite Agung for the next presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Hiram, and thank you, Rex, for nice presentations. And good afternoon. Good afternoon, all. And now I will continue my presentation about the analyzing of social media data. Let me share my screen. Okay. Okay, in the morning sessions, when I talk about ethnography, ethnography or ethnography online, with translate to culture, to culture, to what is meant to merge to the culture is the foundation of the field of anthropology, the ethnography and the anthropology. And this technique has been incorporated into other fields, such as marketing, hospitality, and tourism, and many sciences, many subjects. And to study online, the specific for study online, the consumption community, for example, researcher can adapt ethnographic methodology to fit the virtual to virtual activity, to virtual condition. That's the Kozinet, the Robert Kozinet said about the ethnography. And the ethnography have many names, have the many names. It include virtual ethnography, digital ethnography, online ethnography, cyber ethnography, natural language processing, the critical social research, and live world analysis and social network analysis. And today I will focus on the ethnography as a methodology, as the methodology, and some of the previous literature, previous article talk about comparison about the ethnography to traditional ethnographic the methodologies. And mostly in the previous article talk in hospitality and tourism research, because this is the challenge agenda in the pandemic situation currently. And ethnography offers a variety of alternative options for qualitative research of online content, while differentiating the methodology from traditional ethnography, which can study the customer interaction for the examples. Okay, this is the research, the research by Elizabeth Whelan, that she studied about a content analysis of the use of ethnography in hospitality and tourism research. This paper aims to analyze the difference between these two methodologies, the two methodologies. And the researchers choose the methodology that is the most suitable and fit for the projects. And also this paper objective to compare the current use of ethnography in hospitality and tourism often stated to be founded on the work by the Kozinet against the established ethnographic methodology from the disciplines of anthropology. As you can see in table 2 for the researcher guideline, both of the methodology, ethnography and ethnography, start with the research questions. We exclude the grounded theories, the specific in the qualitative. For the research question in ethnography, the research question purposes interaction between consumers, organization, or consumer organizations. For the ethnography, the researcher isolate the communication. They merge to the community online or reviews, blog, and in the individuals. For the data source, the ethnography specific in physically, the community, and ethnography in online, website, social media platform, and forum. For the data collection, in ethnography is mostly participant observation. In ethnography, non-participant observation, but the other research can be participant observation with the specific consideration. For the ethic, is it full disclosure, and ethnography is non or full disclosure. Yeah, we can both of the ethics. And the data analysis for the ethnography, Elizabeth used the manual for the ethnography, yeah, manual analysis and ethnography mostly use the qualitative data analysis software like N5O, LexiMenser, Data Miner, and Atlas TI. And one of the more relevant findings, finding on this research indicate that there has not been significant growth in the use of ethnography in hospitality, in hospitality and tourism literature. This is the opportunity, the opportunity research in the further to use ethnography in hospitality and tourism. Okay, this is the other research by McKenna, Myers, and Newman in social media in qualitative research, the challenge and the recommendations. Yeah. Okay. As we know that the data in the qualitative is very massive and very growth in every day on the internet, in Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, blog, and all of which can be downloaded, interpret and analyzed by the researchers. And at the moment, our quantitative colleagues are making good use of this flood of data, for example, by using big data analytics to analyze such thing as the statistical relationship between the user of Twitter and their information sharing behavior. That's the point of this research. And the participants, the participant, of course, may be anonymous or use pseudonyms on social media platform, which means that it may be difficult to ensure to authenticity of the data. That's the more challenge in the qualitative research using ethnography. And as we mentioned, and as I mentioned earlier, one of the biggest challenge in the studying in social media is analyzing the large volume of the data. And Brett McKenna on this research collected 128 million discussion posts, and answering some of research questions. And for the data analysis, they use two qualitative data analysis software, N5O and LexiMenser. Yeah, N5O and LexiMenser. The first step was to load the entire data set, into the programs, and then reduce the data set by reading the notes, the page note, and then after analysis of the this one, the extract useful post, they rerun the content, they rerun the content analysis, and then extract knowledge pathways. The keyword, the keyword search, the keyword search using the keyword from the theoretical approach along with keyword based on our knowledge, our knowledge is really useful. Therefore, in finally analysis, the final count of 405 discussion forum posts, which are considered useful for answering the main research questions. And the research question, the research question concerned with the evolution of the technological artifact in the virtual world with the social movement. For N5O, for the N5O software, the process running data, the extracting data, the N5O reduced the data set for the manual coding with the theoretical theory. In this research, they use actor network theory. And then in the fourth step, the new code data set, the new code data set back to the programs and create the knowledge pathways, the knowledge pathway. And the final step, in the step 6, they compare both codes, the coding from the N54 coding compared with each other. Okay, this is the other perspective of the ethnography and the social network analysis, while the author, the researcher, used the mixed method. I think the mixed method study is the potential to address research topic that other methodologies cannot attend to their research. And for the example, the mixed method with the secondary data start with the research question, and we put the data sources from for example, in the annual report, the new articles and traditionals, in the stage 1 for the data sourcing. And the next stage, data developing and converting, we decided the data construction is organization histories or prepare standardized document for content analysis. In the stage 2, after we conduct data construction, we need the next step is the measure development. The measure development is inductive in qualitative, deductive in quantitative. For the inductive measure of development, the application is data structuring, the identification and identification coding. This is the typical of the qualitative. And for the quantitative, especially in the content analysis, is a research question drives coding unit like word, theme, prasa, rating, Likert, and specification. This is the quantitative data analysis, network analysis, and linear modeling. And for the qualitative analysis, if the data cannot be quantization, we use grounded theory or inductive case study like Rex and Dr. Hiram mentioned before. Okay, I think this is the conclusion. The conclusion for the online social network analysis. The online social network analysis has gained much reputation in the field of the networking, in the internet study, and has got a great perspective for researchers today. In summary, the recent trends in the field of different types of analysis, such as web mining, link analysis, network analysis, content analysis, the ontology relationship analysis, and user behavior analysis. This is the example, the stages of qualitative data analysis. When we use software, the stage of the analysis for the data management, data importing and folder creation, we import data, and data classification for the attribute and the file and case classification. For data coding, for research node, case and thematic categorization. And specific in data analysis is thematic analysis, discourse analysis, semantic analysis, and we can visualize, visualize better in our report, in qualitative report, to explore the chart, picture, and diagram. I think it's little bit information about the analysis. And mostly in the qualitative is because the qualitative, in my perspective, is very subjective. Very subjective. Let data talk. Let data talk, and we interpret, and we write on the report, and then and publish. Thank you, Dr. Hiram. Back to you.
Thank you, Agung, for another great presentation. Agung, when we collect data, qualitative data, regardless of where it is. Usually we need to get consent from the respondents. How do you feel about social media data collection? Is there any ethical compliance needed before we collect data from social media? What do you think?
Yeah. For the social media, the one consideration for the social media is to collect data, from the community. And one of the general standard, we have account, we have access, to collect the data, to interact with the user, with the account in the online communities. As long as they accept or confirm with our agenda, our research, that's enough to collect and then to interpretation. But reminder that some ethical consideration have to conduct when we report for the name for the organization. We have to make sure that the data is not confidentially. It's confidentially.
So even though these data are available online, so it is still good that there is some sort of mechanism, procedure to ensure that ethical issues are not compromised. Perhaps we need to get the approval from the admin, and also we assure that these data will not be commercialized. It's only for research purpose. As Agung said just now, we will not disclose their names. In general, it highlights the importance of transparency, as Rex said earlier, and making sure that ethical issues are not jeopardized. Okay, thank you so much. Again, please keep your question coming. So before I move on to my last presentation, I would like to address a few questions here. Earlier, the question was from Michelle again. If you can elaborate further later, I'm concerned about how to determine the sample size for the actual data collection for a small population, let's say 30. Okay, Rex and I have basically illustrated guidelines to determine your sample size for your study. Data saturation is something which we need to do and we need to show in order to justify why there is no more emerging theme, information from the sample, from the population. Now, if you are in a situation where the population is small, then you have to consider other means. There is one non-probability sampling technique, which is called total population sampling. I received a message that my internet connection is not stable. I hope all of you can listen all right. There is a technique called total population sampling technique. So this technique is useful when your population is small. What it does is you collect data from all the rest, from the entire population. It is not a census, even though census is also about collecting data from every subject in your population. It is not. It collects data from all the respondents because your total population is small, and also some of them may reject, may refuse. Some of their data might not be usable. They may not be valid, even though this person is in the population. So you can look into that. That is a non-probability sampling technique. It is called total population sampling. There are also articles about population which is hard to get, hard to approach, population which is more. If I find those articles, I can also include in the email. I hope I remember. But if you Google search, you would be able to find. One common terms they use is population difficult or hard to approach, hard to sample, hard to get. You will find articles related to studies where population is more and how you can, what you can do with it. All right. So not an issue, not an issue. Also, as Rex mentioned this morning, if they are key informants, you don't even have to sample the whole population. Again, it's about justification. Why these people fulfill certain criteria that you set up. And if only 5 to 10 people fulfill that criteria, and if you can justify why these criteria are important, are relevant to addressing your research questions, I don't see there is any issue with it. Okay. I'm only concerned that there are examiners, there are people who are too obsessed with number. When they see small number, they say this is no good. When they see big number, they say this is good. So let me know, Michelle, in your chat whether I've addressed your concern. The next question, Rex, would you like to add on, or would you like to respond to the next question? The question is from Grace. Can you comment a bit on how to handle difficult or uncooperative interviewee or informant? Over to you, Rex.
Hi, Dr. Hiram. Yeah, am I heard? Yeah. Can you comment a bit on how to handle difficult or uncooperative interviewee or informant? I am not sure if uncooperative here is simply a shy or reticent individual, because in the first place, why uncooperative? But you have to properly choose your participants in the first place, making sure that these individuals are are responding to your needs. That's why it's purposive. So if they're uncooperative, I don't think so. If that progress, well, anyway, what's in my mind is like this: you have to make yourself comfortable to your participants, just like what Dr. Hiram said. You can do the first visit, you can do the second visit. Okay, making yourself allowing the participant to be comfortable to you. All right. Then afterwards, you can conduct a formal interview. That's what's in my mind, because I doubt why these individuals, why these participants are uncooperative when in the first place you were the ones choosing them. And you should have the criteria. In fact, there is an informed consent. And part of the clause in the informed consent is that they have to freely and voluntarily express themselves, share the experiences, share ideas. And why are they uncooperative? Yeah, that's my
Okay.
point, Dr. Haram.
Agung, would you like to add on?
Yeah, that's the tricky question, yeah, about the uncooperative interviewee or informant. I think that's the challenge of the qualitative researchers.
Yes.
So, if the person is the person in uncooperative, we have to be patient. We have to be patient. We have to look the mood of the
Yep.
participant, the mood of the informant.
Yeah.
It looks like what they hobbies, or we join to the hobbies, and we conversation not directly in the question of the research, but talk about what about your family, and then until they're very comfortable with our conversation, and then
Yeah.
that's the point to talk about the research. That's
Yeah.
why I have done before. And the most important is the number of informant is not really important, as well as we have the key informant the key informant. Yeah,
Mm.
especially he or she expert in our research. Yeah, expert in our problem and can be suggest and can be advice of the solution. So we
Mm.
have to keep keep the informant, the key informant.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah,
Mm.
that's the point.
Thank you, Agung. Thank you, Agung. If I can merge the two responses together. Number one, it is true that we have to be clear the types of respondents we want to sample. If we use purposive sampling strategy, we would have established certain criteria, and the respondents whom we approach, he must have given us the consent to interview. So we like to think that he or she would be willing to tell us in a more cooperative manner. Of course, uh, uh, if we possess relevant skills to interview, to elicit information from the respondents, that would definitely help. However, in a situation where he is the right respondent we are looking for, in fact, we use example snowball sampling to reach that person. He holds all the qualification, and it's difficult to get this sort of respondents with this qualification example. So we have to interview him or her, or else we will, lose a potential source of information. If that is the case, then as what Agung said, you have to be patient, and you have to get to know him or her fairly quickly in order to ask the right questions, trigger the right button, so that he or she will be more willing to tell you stuff. Now, having said that, again, I remember a lot of situations in the past. In one particular case, I was about to interview a person who was close to 80 years old. I could not afford to let him go because I needed to interview people who went through Japanese occupation. Well, he was 80 years old 10 years ago. So if he's still alive, he should be 90 years old now. So someone recommended him, and that person arranged a meetup for us. So he and I, we met at a place. So I really had no choice because he went through Japanese occupation. He was under British colony, if for those who know Malaysian history. So when I talked to him, he was not really interested. He was reading newspaper. And then he asked me, young man, what do you want to know? So I asked him about, I told him about this research. And then I asked him whether I could start recording. So he was reading his newspaper. He just told me, what is it about before you record? Just tell me first. Okay, so I just told him what the study is about. When he began to talk, then he really talked. So without asking him for permission, I decided to record. That was only after 50 minutes. Because when he talked, when he read, at the same time, he read the newspaper. And he began to tell me all the stories, what happened in the past, in 1940, in 1941 to 1945. So this is just a situation where at the opening session, you have to know him quick in order to use the right words to trigger his or her interest in order to say things and tell you the stories. We don't always get it right, but we have to go through all this to learn, to accumulate all this experience so that we would do the right thing in the next interview. So that will be my response to Grace. Of course, there are various situations. Example, he may not be cooperative due to certain situations, as Rex pointed out. He is willing to be interviewed, but the interview is done at home, and he needs to take care of his kids at the same time. So as I said earlier, as a token of appreciation, so to speak, I bring my assistant, and he can spend time with the kids, and as a result, this respondent becomes more cooperative because his concern is taken care of, and he's not interrupted by his children. So think about your respondents. Think about the context of your study. They are not equal. They are not the same. And understanding who you will be interviewing will definitely help you to have a better preparation. So the moral of the story, we cannot do it like a quantitative research. We distribute the questionnaire to everyone, assuming they are not the same. In actual fact, we know they are not the same, including those who fill up the questionnaire. It doesn't mean they are cooperative. They just want to get rid of the questionnaire, and therefore they fill up the questionnaire. They don't want to hear anything from you, and they submit the questionnaire. Actually, the data are not valid because they did not really read everything. For interview, for focus group, we have the benefit to see, to change, because we can see their body language. We can see their facial expression. And therefore, we need to use our accumulated experience to change, so that hopefully he can become more and more cooperative. Okay, so again, no answer. We hope that it gives us room to consider various situations. It's all about preparation. It's all about knowing your respondents, and during interview and focus group, we can say things correctly. We can use the right terms, so that the respondent will become more cooperative. Okay, let us know if if you need further clarification. Oh, now I see the word sensitive. Okay, it reminds me another experience, because I was collecting data about political advertising. The emphasis is on advertising. The context is political advertising. However, I remember there is one instance. The respondent agreed to participate in the interview. However, during the interview, I could tell he was thinking about political parties. The questionnaire is about political advertising. It doesn't matter which political parties you support. But from the conversation at the earlier stage, during interview, I could tell that he did not want to say too much, because he kept on thinking this interview was about political parties. It was something sensitive. It was done before election, and he must. Well, eventually I knew which side he took, but at that point of time, I realized he must be supporting a certain party, but he did not want to say it. He just told me something brief. Advertising is good, but they have to be careful. Who are the government? Who is in the government? And then the opposition. Don't say something too extreme. Whatever. What happened is, at the end of the interview, he became more and more relaxed. Sometimes, regardless what you say up front as instruction, you still do it to fulfill ethical duty, but they may not fully understand it. So at the end of the interview, I felt that he began to understand things better. I stopped recording. We were at a restaurant, Then he began to tell me more after the recording. After the recording. Out of respect, I did not record. I wrote as much as I can because when I switch off the recorder, the real interview with him being more cooperative began. After the interview, the second part of the interview was done. I told him I will transcribe all this. I cannot transcribe verbatim, but I will construct all this into sentences. I will send the transcript to him as a procedure, as a form of members check, validation check, okay, so that he can endorse that this is correct, because I did not record. So this is what I did in this particular situation. He misunderstood. He felt it is something sensitive. He was not comfortable, even though he was willing. He was less cooperative. He told me indifferent answer, general response. Once he got to know the context better, once I switched off the recorder, he began to tell me what he wanted to tell, which he failed to tell at the beginning. So that could be another situation. Again, know the respondents, know why, what may make them unwilling to tell us, so that we have all the necessary tools ready to handle all the situation. Okay, there's another question from Sochi again. Rex, Agung, do you want to attempt? Researchers should do extensive literature review. In many cases, the heading and subheadings from the literature become important parts of the finding. Why? Because the subheadings could be the variables, the factors. So they could be useful as our findings, as a guidance to write our findings and discussion. The question is, what is your advice to boost our confidence in the way that our findings are not guided from the literature? So I don't know. In this case, you might find something which is less done in past studies. What would you do, Rex, Agung?
Yes, Agung.
Agung first this time.
Okay. Okay. I think this is the most important when you choose as a qualitative researchers. The confidence is number one. The confidence is most important. Even you even you do not bring the theory to look at the massive data, and then finally after you finish the research, you confident to construct your own theory, and maybe the name of the theory can be named Sochi the theory, Rex. Yeah. I think that's confident, that confident for the qualitative researchers. That's also what my supervisor, my mahaguru of the qualitative, also if you want to be a qualitative researcher, you have to confident first. Yeah, because maybe many of you is not agree about what I'm perspective, but this is not true or false. Yeah, this is not just true or false. This is agree or disagree. Yeah, you accept in my perspective, or you do not accept my perspective. Is it okay?
Yeah.
Is it okay? Yeah, this is not war, the quantitative versus the qualitative, but how both of the methodology can be give important to develop our knowledge, develop to solve the problem in the society and the community. So the confidence is very, very important. That's my comment.
Thank you, Agung. What about you, Rex? What's your take on this?
Very good, Agung. Yeah, in terms of literature review, especially in qualitative research, the extensiveness of literature review varies on the tradition that's emphasized by Creswell. For example, in grounded theory, extensive literature review must be done after theory formulation. And if it's a phenomenological study, as much as possible, extensive literature review must be done after at least data analysis, because we need to find the essence of the experience, okay, of the
Yes.
participants. And if we do prior extensive literature review, somehow we can influence our analysis later on. But if it's an ethnographic study, as much as possible, extensive literature review must be done prior to the conduct of the study, because you'll be immersing yourself to the culture. You
Yeah.
know, you have you have to know fully, okay, the culture. If it's a case study, however, it's not a problem. Well, it depends on the severity of the problem, but you can
Yeah.
do pre and post, okay. If it's a narrative study as well, same with the case study, not so much of a problem. So the literature, what is your advice to boost your confidence in the way that our findings are not guided from the LR? So we have, as what I already mentioned, if it's a phenomenological study, so
Mm.
avoid doing extensive literature review prior to the conduct, at least after the data analysis. If you do grounded theory, after after theory formulation. For the rest, well, we have to know your purpose, why you read literature, why you read the literature, because
Yeah.
most of the time we read literature because we want to be informed. We
Mm.
need to benchmark, okay, what
Mm.
our experts in the field are doing, so we can benchmark what they're doing, something like that. Yeah, I guess I talked too much. That's it.
No, no, no. It's good. It's all good. No, thank you so much, Agung,
Yeah, yeah.
Rex. So it really depends. It really depends. But I like the fact that as a qualitative researcher, we have to be confident. If we collect data rigorously, the data are valid, then you have to trust your data as well. Of course, your experience, your interpretation, um, the way you do things, it must be guided as well. Is fine if the findings contradict the past literature. This is where you make a case, you argue, and why this is an extension of the past knowledge, or the extent literature. Um, if you do a qualitative study, your findings are exactly similar to all the past studies, then this could be another problem. There's nothing new uh, in the study. Perhaps you are less confident. Perhaps you do things on the surface. You did not really get to the bottom of the issues. Perhaps interview was all cursory done. Every interview was only 3 minutes long. Yes, no, and then you finish. There's no insights, nothing new. That could be a bigger problem. That could be a bigger problem. So even though our studies are guided by theoretical grounding, we do not have to be bound by all this. So again, these are two continuums. Whether you are doing a research which is theory driven or a research which is data driven, your element, your interpretation as a qualitative researcher will be key. And whatever you decide, you have to be able to justify. Okay, I've seen many papers, they justify by simply stating the past study. That is not good enough. Okay, these findings correspond to past studies done by who and who, and that's it. Still, you have to explain why. You have to explain why. So I believe if you acquire these skills over time, it will also build your confidence as a scholar. Even though you stand upon the shoulder of past scholars, you are also confident to make your researcher's voice heard in your paper. Okay, so I just wish to add on what Rex and Agon said earlier. I hope, Sochi, that responds to your questions. Okay, we have less than 30 minutes left. I guess there might be more questions later, but let me complete the slides. A few things. I hope I can do it in the next 15 to 20 minutes. Therefore, we have a few more minutes to address any questions in the chat room. Okay. Okay, Rex has mentioned about this, so I will not go into details. It is important that you show how validation is done throughout the process. You can also have a section dedicated to validation check. It will make the life of the examiners easier, because this is a very important part to show how credible, how transparent your research is. So if you look at past studies, there are multiple ways to triangulate. It could be by multiple investigators, multiple sources of data, multiple data collection methods, for example, interview plus focus groups, or multiple theoretical perspectives. Again, for those who, adopt the one school of thought, advocating for theoretical grounding. So this allows you to see things from different perspectives. But again, remember that you do not want to be bound by this, because if you do that, then you are actually limiting emerging data, emerging themes from your data. Okay, so you can look into this triangulation, or as I mentioned earlier, you can get members to check. It could be, you can also get peer review examination. You can also get, researchers' position, your reflexibility. This is why your memoing could be important. Whatever you write in your memo, these are not the data from your respondents, but you can use that to support. Again, it could be due to context. It could be due to his personality. All right, things that you observe. Inspiration comes and goes. There are things that you realize in the moment, at that point of time. If you don't write them down, if you don't capture them, you go home, you do your analysis, you know something happened, you forget. Okay, so again, that position, that reflexivity, especially through memoing, could be very important. Adequate engagement in data collection, again, it shows how much you are involved in the data collection process, okay, to make sure the data that you collect is rich, and your data saturation point is achieved. Attention to sampling, Rex and I have said enough on that, Agung as well. So make sure this is done correctly, because if you don't, all your efforts will go wasted. So make sure the respondents, the preparation, the environment, all this are important to make sure you collect data, valid data from the respondents. Rex talked about audit trail. It's something that you can do to show in detail the procedures, how things are done, how you make decision. If yes, this way. If no, that way. Again, you make your research process, your design transparent. Okay. Finally, rich, thick description. So you cannot be satisfied with yes and no answer. And you don't ask them, do you agree? Do you not agree? If they say yes, if they say no, you have to be able to probe. So avoid, yes, no question. This is why probing techniques are very important. After explaining to you what they think, you can always follow up by asking, could you give me an example? Could you elaborate on this particular point that you mentioned earlier? So this is how you elicit data to get rich and thick descriptions about the issues that you are investigating. Okay, you can get your friends to check. Remember, you can also ask the respondents to check if he or she is willing to give you their contact details. The good thing is you can get him or her to check, to endorse, especially when, as I said earlier, the interview was done without recording. Okay. Number two, this is a good opportunity for you to ask follow-up questions because you have the opportunity to see the person again. You tell him that you want him to check. Okay, most likely he will agree because, you know, this is his data. But you actually use this opportunity to ask any follow-up questions. Why? Because in reality, many times, we only realize what we forget to ask, what we forget to probe after we see the transcription, after we listen to the audio and after we see the transcription. I should have asked this. I should have asked this, you know, because at that point of time, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, sometimes our memory fails us. We forgot what we should ask. So that follow-up affords you the second opportunity to ask again. So whatever he tells you, you can put that responses into your interview transcripts. Okay. However, there is a disadvantage, at least one disadvantage. In fact, there are quite a few, but let me just tell you one. Many times when they look at the transcript, they may tell you, they may ask you, did I really say this? Can you delete this? Can you remove that? If that happens, you are in dilemma. You have a full transcript. Now he or she is telling you to remove this, to remove that. So again, you have to know your respondent. Even though we cannot predict them 100%, but you still have to know them to decide what is best. At the end of the day, data is king. If data is valid, data is king. You have to trust your data because this is where you generate your findings, discussions, implications, and you merge with past literature in order to advance knowledge in theory and practice. Okay, so I hope I've said enough on this. Another way, you can do coding alone, or you can do team coding. Okay, you can also use interpretative memo as part of the validation check. Team coding is, for me, is very useful, very important. We don't have time to go into details, but this is, I believe this is from yes, Johnny Saldana. You can actually download the earlier version of this book for free. Okay, online, the earlier version. I actually invited Johnny Saldana for a workshop, but he was too busy. So we will see how things go. Okay. Use raw data to support your analysis. Well, I think I would just skip this part. Basically, we have covered all this. In your findings, in your discussion, you have your quotes, you have your themes. You need to use raw data, basically the text in your transcript as quotes, Q-U-O-T-S, to support your quotes, to support your themes, to support your discussion. Okay. Also, tonight or tomorrow morning, we will send you a few sample articles. So you will be able to see under findings and discussion, they will use raw data as quotes, as evidence to support the quotes or themes. And from there, they can discuss, you know, the findings. And from there, they will be able to provide implications. Now, I hope you can see why, if the respondents only tell you yes, no, you have no raw data to support, because it will be absurd if you put yes, no. Your question is longer than the answer. that will be a problem. And this is also a problem of the interviewer. We are too enthusiastic and we are too concerned, and therefore we ask long questions. In our questions, we cover all the possible answers. And what he needs to do, yes. What she needs to do, no, I disagree. Okay? You cannot merely put your question as a quote to support. Cannot. You must use their response as quote to support. You can include your question to support the response from the respondents. That is fine. But you cannot use only your question as support. Okay? Therefore, you must get them to talk. Again, 3:47. Okay, I need to be aware of my time because I remember many instances in the past. Anyway, because the interviewer worked in the government sector for more than 30 years, a veteran, but he did his PhD, and in one particular research, he was assigned to interview government officials because he has the experience. So we thought that with that experience, he would know what to elicit. Unfortunately, the officials that he interviewed were young people in their 20s. So when we listened to the recorded interview, eventually we decided to throw away. Why? Because that young official felt intimidated. This interviewer, even though he was doing his PhD, he was a government officer for more than 30 years. The responses given by the young officer, the interviewer told him, this is actually wrong. This is not the true situation. It is because of blah, blah, blah. After explaining, then he began to ask his question. He put on his researcher hat again. The next question is, so we told him, sorry, we just have to throw the entire thing away because eventually all that she said is, I think so, yes, no, I think so, I believe so. She was not, she felt intimidated. Anyway, so I just move on. I hope you get the idea. In fact, we have said this already. Now, this is the process, okay? This is the process, how things are coded, are themed. Eventually, they produce the themes, the categories, the dimensions of your study, the properties of your study. Okay, but let me show you another diagram. Okay, well, this is just another studies showing why it is an iterative process. On one hand, you rely on your data. On the other hand, you look at the theories, you look at the literature. All this should help one another. They should not limit you. They should help you to come up with meaningful, practical findings. Okay, so that is for qualitative research. Okay, don't be limited. They should help you. Theories, literature help you, and your data help you to explore, to come up with meaningful findings. Okay, this is what we have said in many occasions. It is a data reduction process. You deal with a lot of text, pictures, but how you narrow them, how you reduce them. Eventually, you have 5 to 7 themes, and these themes are measured by quotes, and these quotes are supported by quotes or raw data from your qualitative research. Again, something for you to study. And this is just another graphical presentation how raw data could help you to come up with quotes, and how these quotes would further help you to come up with categories or themes. If you look at the diagram, it looks very similar to a quantitative framework. Remember what I said this earlier. This is basically a continuum of, of two things. So we begin from what is particular. We begin at the real setting. We collect actual data, and from there we have quotes to support quotes, and we can actually categorize these quotes together as one unit under one theme. This theme could be a variable, it could be a dimension. Again, it's really up to you. As long as they are valid, they are exhaustive, and they are mutually exclusive. Okay, so if you do a study to develop a model, a theory, then this would be the process. If you don't develop a theory, if you don't develop a model, in general, this is also the process. You need raw data to support the codes, the themes, the categories that you develop in your study. So in your discussion and in your implications, you don't have to repeat all the quotes again. You don't have to repeat all the quotes again. You just use the themes that you come up with, and from there, you provide theoretical implications and also managerial implications. Okay, so I hope you understand why this is done in this way. Now, we have really no time to talk about writing. It is something very subjective. But like I said earlier this morning, we want to give you an overview of the entire qualitative research, and therefore this is included. I distinguish craft from draft because when you craft, it means you need some storytelling skills. Storytelling skill, like it or not, is very, very important in qualitative research. So if you draft, you do what is necessary. You can follow the guidelines. You can follow the template. You can refer to your seniors' work. You can refer to past theses. These are good resources for you to begin something with. Okay? Draft. Be consistent. Okay? Meet deadlines. So on and so forth. Now, crafting is something different because it is more like a storytelling thing. And for most qualitative research, it is very important. The gap that you are addressing may be small, but the way you argue, you justify, you can make it really, really significant. Okay, so again, there are 4 things that you can do. This is also why I told many of my colleagues, my juniors, after you get a paper done, sleep on it. Don't submit immediately. Sleep on it because you need to spend another few days to go through. You have to be the best critic of your work. Well, you can get others to criticize, to comment. That is fine. That is part of the exercise. You as a researcher, you have to be the best critic of your work. If you can improve your work, if you learn something more today than what you did last week, that is a significant improvement. Okay, so look at your work, talk to people, ask yourself whether this is interesting. Is there any wow factor? Do you need to revise your first paragraph? Do you need to revise your second paragraph? Your first and second paragraph may be wonderful, all are facts, all are supported by literature. They may be boring. They may be boring. After reading the first paragraph, they don't want to read the second paragraph anymore. So, of course, I might be raising the bar high here. If you do it for the first time, don't worry, just do it. Okay, you need to build confidence. But for those who have done it, then you have to raise your bar higher. And these are things you have to consider. You have to consider, okay, in order to compete with other good papers, to publish, to get recognized. So again, I like what Agung did earlier. I gave you a few screenshots of papers you can look at. These are papers, I believe, useful for you to write and to publish qualitative papers. Okay, this is in Journal of Service Marketing. This is a good one. Okay, I use it for many years. A trail guide to publishing success, tips on writing influential, conceptual, qualitative, and survey research. There are 4 points in brief. I purposely highlight point number 4, and that is storytelling. What are the other 3 points? Number 1, theoretical grounding. Number 2, methodological clarity. Number 3, justification. Number 4, storytelling. And if you look at the other side of the screen, you have all these guidelines to help you to draft and also craft your paper. All right, so you can find this article. If not, we will send to you. This is something which I did in my paper. It is like an audit trail, but basically this is a flow chart showing the process, how we design the entire research. And there are instances where we will decide what to do. Again, we want to be transparent. We want to show them that the findings are credible. They are confirmed in many instances before we arrived at our findings, discussions, and implications. Okay, so you may want to do something like this in your thesis, in your paper. All right, I'm almost there. Final remarks, okay, by another guru. Any researcher who wishes to become proficient at doing qualitative analysis must learn to code well and easily. The excellence of the research rests in large part on the excellence of the coding. So that will be my conclusion. Well, before another conclusion, another concluding word. Yes, we use software. Software is necessary. Software is really useful, especially when we handle big data. But as a researcher, you must learn how to code. To learn to code, you have to learn all the qualitative skills we mentioned in the morning. You just cannot do things using template. You just cannot do things by merely listening to instructions. You may be able to get things done. It will not make you a good qualitative researcher. You will not be able to produce a good qualitative paper. So coding is very important. And because of the word coding, you have to learn all the skills. How to think critically, how to listen, how to elicit, how to think outside the box, how to incorporate different ideas together. Okay. Finally, like it or not, don't take it personally. These are a few things to encourage us to learn to be better researcher, or specifically qualitative researcher. Number 1, you need to be organized. Number 2, you need to exercise perseverance. I hope you get the message. Number 3, you need to be able to deal with ambiguity, a lot of unknown situation. Would you ignore them like outliers? Just remove, just throw away. That person could be the next Albert Einstein. He's telling you what will happen in the next 10 years. Don't throw him away. You will need to exercise flexibility. You need to be creative. Number 6, I feel guilty as well. You need to be rigorously ethical. Sometimes our work is not perfect. So, open one eye, close one eye. Like I said this morning, report half-truth. You're not lying. You are just reporting half-truth. If you report too many things, you make yourself vulnerable to many questions during Viva. So you have to be careful. Number 7, like it or not, you need extensive vocabulary. So if this is a limitation, then always work with different researchers. Then we can complement each other and we can come up with a good work. Finally, as I mentioned at the beginning, to see more, to know more, to do more, it is always important to know what is actually happening out there. I will still insist on this. Talk to the practitioners. Talk to more people out there. Don't work in cocoon, in isolation, in silo, thinking that Google Scholar is all that you need. Of course, we need literature badly. We cannot do things without them because we are producing scholarly works. However, you have to be able to talk to other people. At the end of the day, it is about knowledge claim, knowledge translation, knowledge transfer, whether the things that we do are of practical value to the community we live in, the community we serve. All right, so I think that's it. I know there are questions. Okay, let me go through the questions quickly. Normally, should data gathering be one time to the respondents or several times meeting them relating to school students? If several times, can the data be biased then? If they would answer SEM related questions differently? Again, we cannot give you a definite answer. It really depends on the nature of your research problem, your research questions, and also the context of your study. The context of your study. If you collect data one time from them, just make sure you do that well and you justify. If you have to follow up, because it is the study example where you need to know before and after, and there could be an intervention pre and post. In that case, you have to go back to the same respondents and you have to do it 2 times, 3 times, 4 times. Okay, example, after watching the campaign on non-smoking, why they still smoke? So if that is the case, you cannot collect, it would be insufficient if you collect data one time. Why? Because you collect data, you interview the person right after the campaign. He will tell you, yes, I understand. Yes, from today onwards, I will quit smoking. Trust me, after 3 months, after 6 months, you ask him again, he will give you different answers. These different answers are important because they help you to address your research questions. Also, I did this study with my friends, healthcare professionals, on medical adherence of old people, elderly people. They understood after the campaign. After 2 weeks, after 2 months, they forget, they cannot remember. Forget and cannot remember in psychology are 2 different things. Or their neighbors who are of their same age give testimony. Don't use that Western medication. Use this. Why? You look at me, I'm good. Okay, so there are many situations that you have to we have to realize. So this is why I told my friends, all the healthcare professionals, you can tell all the elderly people, good effect, side effect, why take this, why don't take this. You must understand at their age, 80 years old, don't tell them side effect. They don't have many years to live. Allow me if I offend any one of you, okay, or your parents or whatever, but this is the reality. This is why when his friend, same age, tells him to use an unregistered health product, and look at them, they are happy. They can live another 2 years, 3 years happily. They can walk, they can eat anything they like, even though there is side effect, even though it is not recommended. Understanding the psychological part, how they think, will help healthcare professionals to rethink whether we should design the campaign the way it is. It is not about right or wrong. It's about them how they see their life. Should they control their diet for the next 2 years, or should they enjoy their life for the next 2 years? That's why I told them there are things which are not about right or wrong. They don't think that way because they are already at that age. I hope you understand. Huh? So this is why if you don't collect data 2 times, 3 times in this situation, you won't know what is actually happening. Okay, so I leave it to you to decide what is actually your study about. So yes, for raw data is yes and no answer is no good. You have to probe. You have to ask him why or how, unless your qualitative study is only concerned about yes and no. For example, you go to the shopping mall, Brexit, should a referendum be held? Yes or no? And then from there, you do all the frequency, percentage. Eventually, UK have spoken. 70% Brexit, 30% remain. Okay, in that case, yes and no would be sufficient. Okay, again, it depends on your study, but based on what I said earlier, what Rex and Agung presented earlier, in most cases, you have to go beyond yes and no. All right, so that concludes our presentation, our workshop today. I hope you find it useful. We only have 6 hours basically to cover everything. We hope we did enough to give you a good idea what qualitative research is, how you conduct. Specifically, we talk about phenomenology, we talk about ethnography, we also talk about how you can analyze social media data. We could not provide every detail, but on our slides, we prepared some screenshots of articles which you can read to know better. Either tonight or tomorrow, we will send you the email with the slides and the relevant articles for you to read. Rex, Agung, if you have any articles, please send to me. I will compile them and we will send to them. Rex, Agung, is there any final word before we conclude? Rex, please, because Rex mic is already unmuted.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Hiram, for this opportunity to share, okay, about qualitative research. I know that I have so much to learn from you. In fact, I'm learning a lot from you today. Thank you very much. And to all who are listening in the Zoom room, one thing I could say is that we have to be very keen at our methodology and our methods, because before problematizing the problem, this must be established. The next thing that we need to be very careful of is the methodology, because once the methodology is poorly or improperly implemented, the rest of the details, the findings especially, will be poor as well. And what's the point of conducting research after all if we cannot contribute to the to the pool of knowledge, to the body of knowledge? As much as possible, we should be able to find our niche, okay, in the in the conversation. Thank you very much, Dr. Hiram.
Thank you, Rex. Agung, would you like to say a few words? Please don't leave. We will take a group photo, right? Agung, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Hiram, Rex, and everyone here. My my last speaker, just be confident, yeah, be confident to do research and publish, yeah, publish or perish, something like that. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Indeed, be confident. Just keep moving. It is okay to make mistake, but this is where we learn and we become better. So I'm not sure. Would you all agree to switch on your video so that we can take a photo before we conclude? Andrea, would you like to do that, or?
Yeah, I can do it.
Okay, thank you so much. So once again, thank you for being here. Stay in touch, keep in touch, stay safe. We hope we will be able to send you the materials tomorrow, latest tomorrow. But if you need anything else, just write to us. In the email, Rex and Agung will also be CC'd. Example, if you want to know more about NVivo, look for Agung. I would definitely want to join one of his sessions in the future. And if you need to know anything about Philippines, phenomenology, look for Rex. Okay, so I'm not sure if everyone is ready. So we have a few who have not, whose video are still closed. It's okay if they want to stay
Okay.
dark.
Are you ready? I will count until 3, yeah? All right. 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay. A moment, let me check if this is good. Maybe we take one more time, shall we?
Sure.
All right, everyone, look at the camera. All right, 1, 2, 3. All right, cool. Yes, okay, got it, perfect.
All done.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so
Yes, all
much.
done.
Also, we appreciate your participation and also your contribution, because part of the fees will go to donation to help those charities, humanitarian efforts. So this is our commitment, and we all contribute to this. It is not just SRS, but all the participants make a contribution to the society. All right, bye-bye. Stay safe.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray.
Doctor. Thank you, Rex. Thank you, Agung.
Hi, PC.
Hi. Long time no see, Rex.
Yeah.
Thank
Hey.
you.
Hi, Lenny.
Thank you,
Is
Winnie.
Lenny here?
Oh, Winnie's gone. Okay. Should I end the meeting, or you still have personal communication conversation here? Okay. Bye bye. Agung, Rex. Thanks.